Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx back in the DJcity UK lab. Today we're kind of talking about two different things. Firstly, we have the Kontrol S2 Mark III from Native Instruments, their latest entry-level budget 2-channel controller. That's been around for a while. I've had it here in the lab for a few weeks now. But the reason that I haven't spoken about it until this time is that I've been waiting for the second part of the puzzle, and that is the new beginner DJ app from Native Instruments, Traktor DJ2. Let's get into it. Whilst the Mark III version of the Kontrol S2 looks pretty similar to its predecessors, when you start to look at the details, it is quite a different beast. One of the earliest videos I ever made back in my Mojaxx TV days was a walkthrough of the Mark II, and it's clear looking back at that now that the S2 Mark II was definitely aimed to some degree at professional users. It had a booth output, balanced jacks on the master out, and besides the smaller number of channels and lack of DVS support, wasn't that far away from the S4 Mark II. It also cost over $400 though, which was steep even by 2013 standards. The Mark III is definitely aimed far more squarely at beginners, with a price of around $300. This is one of the rare cases where European DJs actually get a better deal too, thanks to exchange rates, with the Mark III having a street price here of just €240. In terms of connections, yes, there have been some compromises. There's just one output with either RCA sockets or an 1/8" jack. There's still a mic input though, with a 1/4" jack socket and a gain control, and headphones are on an 1/8" jack around the front. A quick word on the headphone volume of Traktor control devices. I often see people complaining they don't go loud enough. Now, I'd never discount people's experiences, but I've never found that to be an issue. I wonder if maybe people are using higher impedance cans than me perhaps. Sennheiser HD25s have nearly double the impedance of my Pioneer X10s. Either way, I found there was plenty of output for me on the S2 Mark III, and if I was to run the Q at maximum volume for too long, I'd definitely be doing some damage to my ears. It'll certainly be loud enough for the bedroom. I'll talk about power and the USB hookups together because on the S2, they're kind of the same thing. When using the device with a laptop, you connect it with a regular USB-B cable and it runs on bus power. But as the holes on the rear of the unit for an as yet unreleased iPad stand suggest, this device is not just for laptops. There's also a second USB-A port, which connects to an iPad. That could be either with a USB to Lightning connector or a USB-A to USB-C cable for the latest iPad Pro. This is where it gets confusing, but also quite clever. With an iPad connected to that port, the main USB port can then be used for power. You can plug it into an iPad charger using a regular USB cable, or even into a power bank. And I reckon the iPad will charge if you use a 12-watt adapter, although my iPad Pro wouldn't charge with a 10-watt one or a power bank. The whole lot did work fine, it just didn't charge the iPad. So in theory, you could be fully mobile with that setup. What did charge my iPad was using a standard 15-volt Native Instruments power supply instead of USB power. So although that isn't included, it's still there as a good option for users. My only complaint about the power situation was that no setup really makes any difference to the woeful brightness levels of the LEDs on the unit, the pads in particular. I really hope NI sort that out in firmware, as they're just too dim for daylight use right now. The Mark III has a slightly different shape compared to previous versions, being a little bit wider but shorter front to back. This means you now have a full suite of 8 pads as well as dedicated transport controls. Both pitch faders have also moved to the right of their respective deck sections, which I much prefer over having both on the outside edge. The pads have the traditional Native Instruments clicky feel, which I'm happy with, and that's the theme of this device in many ways. If you've used other NI gear before, you'll feel right at home, and if you start with the S2 and move on later, it will be likewise. Everything is very plastic, but in that very precise Native Instruments fashion, and I know from experience that their gear lasts. The other significant change is the removal of the 3 effects knobs and 4 buttons from the top of the unit, which controlled Traktor's main effects banks, and the addition of the mixer effects instead. I'm in two minds about this. As a long-term Traktor user, I really miss the main effects from Traktor. They're really powerful and allow super granular control. But on the other hand, looking from the perspective of a beginner, that is a problem. It's just not that easy to get your head around, and the mixer effects offer a very straightforward, instant gratification setup without too much thinking about it. Overall, for the user the S2 is aimed at, I'm going to call this one a sensible move. As on the S4 though, I still wish the mixer effects were post crossfader as well as post up fader. The 5.5-inch jog wheels have a good amount of resistance and feel great in general. They are larger than the previous models. Cueing and scratching is accurate, and the metal top surface responded to my touch perfectly every time. No complaints with those. Pitch faders are a bit short for my taste, but pretty accurate, especially in the tighter pitch ranges. Integration with Traktor Pro 3 is on point, and everything does what you'd expect it to do. It ships with a full license for that software, which is cool, although if you're a beginner, that may not be what you use to begin with. And on that note, let's talk about Traktor DJ2. Traktor DJ in its original form was purely for iPads and iPhones, and it was very cool actually. It was totally touch orientated with big on-screen controls which you could really grab hold of. Things like changing loop length could only be achieved by pinching the waveforms, and it had other cool stuff like Dropbox integration. It was always a bit sparse when it came to features, but still it never really felt like a beginner app, instead being more of a different take on DJing in a touch-based environment. But then NI seemed to lose interest in it, and updates slowed from a trickle to non-existent. So when they announced Traktor DJ2, I was very intrigued, but despite the name, this is something rather different from what came before. This is neither Traktor DJ or Traktor Pro. Instead, it's an app for iPad, OS X and Windows, aimed purely at beginners. Simple is absolutely the first word that comes to mind when you use it. Options are virtually non-existent, so whilst it is lacking in depth, there's also very little to dig into and mess up. Each deck has 3-band EQ, mixer effects with a choice of filter, delay, reverb and gator, and auto loop with adjustable length. There's freeze mode, flux mode and 8 hot cues. You can also save loops as hot cues as you can in Traktor Pro. There are 2 display options on iPad, jog wheel or waveform, with a 3rd mode on desktop which looks more like Traktor Pro. They're all very clean with that traditional Traktor aesthetic. In terms of library, you have some demo tracks, then on desktop you can build a library using your files on your computer, and on iPad you can play tracks from the music library stored on your device. I do find it odd that it doesn't pick up an existing Traktor Pro library on your computer if you have one already, like Serato DJ Lite does with DJ Pro, but I guess they aren't intending for advanced users to try this at all. Track analysis is automatic, and although you can't specify BPM parameters, you can halve or double BPMs. There's no way I could find to correct a BPM if it's completely wrong though, and like Traktor Pro, grids for non-quantized tracks just aren't going to happen. You do have actual pitch faders for manual mixing, however, which the original Traktor DJ bizarrely didn't have, but there's no way to switch off quantize or snapping, so this app is definitely more suited to modern, quantized music than old funk or disco, for example. As is the way of the world now, Traktor DJ2 includes streaming, although at this point it's only with the weakest service on the market, SoundCloud Go Plus. The tech behind the SoundCloud service is okay, but the catalogue is really quite problematic, with everything ever uploaded to SoundCloud available to you, regardless of the original upload quality or accuracy of labelling. I'd much rather see something like Tidal in here, and I hope they expand the options soon. As an experienced DJ, there's obviously going to be quite a lot missing from Traktor DJ which I'm used to, but thinking again from a beginner perspective, there are only really 2 important things which I think they need to sort out ASAP: recording and crossfader curve adjustment. Recording needs to be in there because beginner DJs need to be able to listen back to themselves and critique what they've done and share mixes with friends for feedback. I appreciate that recording won't be allowed with streaming, but it should be available when mixing your own tracks. And we do need crossfader curve adjustment in there because the S2 Mark III integrates really well with Traktor DJ2, but you can't do any cutting with only a blend curve as standard. The fader itself is certainly not amazing, but it's good enough to start learning with, and lots of beginners want to learn to cut. Overall, Traktor DJ2 is a bit of a curious one. It doesn't push the limits of touch DJing in the way that the original did, feeling a lot more like a desktop app first, which also happens to work on iPads. So I don't think it will be challenging the dominance of Algorithm's DJ on iOS anytime soon, but it is a nice, simple and crucially free app for beginners to try DJing with, and as Traktor has traditionally always had quite a high barrier for entry, that could be a big step forward for the platform. So there you go, my take on the Kontrol S2 Mark III and a first look at Traktor DJ2. Not much more to add about the hardware really. The S2, it's the entry-level choice. If you're looking at getting into DJing, you think Traktor is the ecosystem you want to be a part of, then the S2 is the natural one to go for, and you won't be disappointed. It's great value, feels great. I love the way Native Instruments hardware feels, whether that's in production or in DJ stuff. It's got all the features that you could need to sort of start off DJing and develop your skills. Yeah, always going to be a solid choice. The Mark II was before it, the Mark I was before that. I'm a big fan of the S2. Traktor DJ2, it's interesting because on the one hand, I'm quite an advanced user of Traktor Pro. On the other hand, I was a big fan of Traktor DJ, the first version. That was just unique. It was completely different from any other DJ software out there on the market, whether that was on tablets or anything else. And it was crazy limited, but what it did very well. And I actually did quite a few gigs with Traktor DJ, just really as a proof of concept, but it worked, you know. So I was very intrigued as to how this second version would go. It's not as unique as the previous one. There is a bit more kind of familiarity there. If you've tried other DJ apps, this feels a little bit more like what else is out there on the market, but it still retains that kind of unique Traktor styling, that aesthetic, and overall it works very well. So it's probably not going to be one for the advanced DJs, and I'd like to see a few more features make their way in there. But whether you're using it on a tablet or on a computer, yeah, and you're a beginner, you want some simple software to get you started, Traktor DJ looks like it's going to be an excellent choice. I'll return to it as we move forward. Thank you for watching today. Make sure you're subscribed and you hit that bell icon down below to get notified anytime there's a new video from myself or the rest of the DJcity team. I'll see you soon.